ready to kick this off. Thanks for coming to this session. Why AI startups need the right advisors. So just a little bit of background. I'm Steve Ardiri. We're going to do self-intros. I'll kick it off. This is my 4th year in a row as a speaker at AI World, also on the Executive Advisory Board. And for the last 3 years, I was moderating a panel, AI Follow the Money. So it was me as a moderator with VCs. And when they approached me this year again to do it, I said, I don't want to do it anymore because it's kind of boring. And I want to do something a little more dynamic, which really is this panel here. So we're going to introduce self-intros on the panelists, and we're going to plunge right in. So we'll start right to the left of me, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Rebecca Clyde here, co-founder and CEO of Botco AI. And we are an AI platform for conversational marketing, helping businesses close more business.
Hi, my name is Nya Gwen. I am the principal for Vision Forward based in New York City. I provide innovation strategy for institution and startup using behavioral insights to drive design and innovation.
And hi, I'm Brianna Silver of Silver Consulting. So my organization supports organizations to really look at where should they be going in the future. So we help to lead the transformation of change. We sit at the intersection of market research, user experience, design, and strategy, and really support organizations to enhance their brands, fill their innovation pipelines, and then align stakeholders around new visions for growth.
Great. So the abstract is, for startups, it's mostly a fallacy when VCs say they're going to provide more than funding. So really, to craft a winning value proposition, you have to fuse business strategy with brand. And that's where we have the expert panel to share their experiences. And that's essentially what we're going to focus on here in the presentation. So we're going to really make this interactive. We don't have to wait for questions at the act. So if you really have a burning question, there's a microphone right there in the middle. So the question that I'll float out to the panelists right out of the gate is, tell us about your best use case, customer experience for your company, as a startup or as an advisor that helped really craft a winning business strategy that nailed the product fit and getting into customer traction. So you want to kick this off, Rebecca?
Sure. All right. So at Botco AI, we're dabbling some fairly new technology, which is conversational AI, natural language processing. And fortunately, we were able to get on our team as our chief science advisor, Dr. Deborah McGinnis. She runs the ontology engineering program at RPI. You actually have her textbook right here. And she also developed and designed the Knowledge Systems Lab at Stanford. And is a world-renowned speaker. So we were very fortunate to be able to get her on our advisory board. And one of the things she mentioned to us very early on when we were just getting our product going was, of course, she cautioned us on all of the pitfalls of NLP, but she was able to point us in the right direction in terms of the types of frameworks that we should consider looking into closely and attempting to test out first early on. And then she gave us a really important piece of advice. She said, AI really takes a lot more data than you think to train. And so give yourself enough runway, get real customer data, implement this initially in some very contained environments before you really launch it. And we're now just wrapping up our first year of an early access program with 2 key customers that we essentially built our platform around, Best Western and Massage Envy. And during this time, we were able to become very knowledgeable about not only the kinds of questions their customers are asking, but which ones are going to result in a buying situation, which ones are going to convert into a booking versus maybe the ones that are not. And we were able to refine the technology and the experience in such a way that we are now able to essentially double their conversion rates utilizing our technology. So I definitely attribute that win to our science advisor, Deborah McGinnis, because without that really helpful insight, we probably would have maybe hurried or jumped the gun on a few things.
Yeah, so it's a lot more than just cursory A/B testing. It was really deep, customer engagement to really suss out, the right type of KPIs, parameters for the product launch.
Right, definitely. I mean, a year's worth of data collected during that time.
Terrific. No?
I move to you.
Sure, yeah. It actually sort of works well to take a jump because one of the stories I would like to share is also around customer engagement, but sort of taking a slightly different approach to that. So my expertise on this panel is more around value proposition. So what is your reason for being? How are you clearly and distinctively different than others who may be playing in a similar environment as you? And so really looking at that from a brand perspective, but then also from who is the customer that you are serving and what makes that individual tick, and how do you really capture that? So one of the programs that we recently worked on, it was for an insurer, health insurer. And they had a case management program. For those who are not familiar with what case management is, if you have a very chronic situation or like have been diagnosed with cancer or something of that nature, you have somebody who walks in step with you in that process that helps to ensure that you've got the proper care, but then also can navigate the insurance system and everything else. They try to make the whole process a lot easier for you. So coming into this project, the client had a very solid case management program. They've won a lot of awards for what that case management program is, but their conversion rate was like 2% of people that they reach out to. And so when we started the project, they said, literally, if you can just increase this conversion by like 1 or 2%, that represents millions of dollars that are saved for our organization on a yearly basis, because the people who are needing case management have very significant health bills, essentially. And so the way that we approached this was trying to understand, well, what is the value proposition of case management by a health insurer compared to, going to, a church group, for instance, or your local hospital who may have other types of engagement, or, through a peer network, whatever it may be. Like, what is the core value proposition of using your insurer for that? But then also, what are the core barriers associated with that? So for certain, trust is a huge one, right? That just starts shining light bulbs of, are they really working in my best interest? And what it came down to is that we had to understand those basic core principles so that we could understand how to develop the engagement strategy. But the way that they were initially going at it is it would be, essentially, somebody would pick up the phone. So for instance, let's say they were calling me. They would say, "Hi, Brianna, we know that you were just diagnosed with cancer. Would you be able to stay on the phone for 45 minutes to have a conversation right now about how we can better support you for case management?" Well, first of all, who answers the phone today? Second, who has 45 minutes to dedicate towards this assessment right there? And even if you did, you're probably taking so many drugs and all these other things that you can't actually accurately answer half of the questions in that 45-minute period. And so ultimately, what we were able to do for them is to redesign that process to a 5-step engagement strategy, some that's automated, some that still requires a human, but in that process, also delineate what the focus and the intent was for each stage of that. So they just went through a pilot. They were able to increase the KPIs. That they had 3 metrics for the pilot. They were able to increase the KPIs by anywhere from 2 to 4 percentage points on each. That has represented $700,000 being saved for the organization just in pilot. And so they are now moving into full-scale implementation of the engagement strategy.
So it went from 2%, another plus 2 to 4% on top of that. And what are the primary communication channels now? What did it end up being from what it was before?
So why it's a nice, follow-up is, so definitely, going through, text messaging, email for sure still, phone. But when we started this, I should also share, when we started this, they thought the big answer was to go do robocalls. And it's no, that is not going to support getting to this point. And they were also very focused on it being a push-only strategy instead of a pull strategy. And so we were able to, use these different methods of communication, but also open up the possibility that it can be a pull strategy. Even something as simple as putting an automated scheduler in. It's simple, yet hugely valuable and effective.
Sure, that's terrific stuff. No?
What was the question again?
So it's tell us about your best customer use case where you crafted the winning value proposition to connect business and brand strategy for success.
Okay, so I'm going to approach this in a best way because I am industry agnostic in my work. I am a interdisciplinary, human-centered designer, and what that means is that I look, whether it's a business or design or technology that we're integrating into a solution that you're hoping to solve, it's about understanding and making meaning. Because by the end of the day, who is the end user? Why are they paying for it? So I'm going to share the commonality of the work, because I also work both for institutions like LG, Memorial Sloan Kettering, and then I also work with like early stage stage startups where they're just still figuring things out. And one of the things, the commonality is, I also help build the value proposition. They may know what they want. What happens is when you're really deep into it, you kind of lose sight why you're doing what you're doing. So one of the things that I really work in both from the institution and the startup is really grounding the philosophy, the brand mission, and how does that thread into the product and feature that you're actually creating. So that's where I emphasize is that the philosophy, do you embody it? Is it in your messaging? And more or less, what are you solving through the products and features? And sometimes they want to solve everything, It's the product creep. They want to add, because the more things, the more you solve, you want to dominate the market. But what happens is it gets lost, it gets muddy, and there's no clarity. So restraint, discipline, and really, I go in not having an answer, to be honest with you. I am the person that has the least answer going in, but what my value that I bring in is that I listen and I try to understand from different points of view from the stakeholders in the business and how they're going to make money, from what the founders and the employees, why are they championing this product? Why do they want to work for you? As well as the shoppers or the patients, why do they want to connect with you? And it's really about the interaction and the threading. It's about the invisibility. It's something that you can't see, but it's something that you can feel. And that is really hard to touch upon, is that you can talk about numbers and metrics and bring in the quantification, but how are you going to translate that into a design language that makes sense? How are you going to translate that into a business model that makes sense, that is sustainable? And what does sustainability mean these days? Are you going to last for a year? You're going to actually gain traction and get all this customer, but then they try your product once and they disappear. That's not sustainability. You got traction and you have a proof that people like your product, but to build that that connection relationship really requires deeper than that. A deeper connection. And that actually takes time, and that really takes engagement on a different level. And I think that's why it's interesting when you're talking about artificial intelligence, there's understanding, there's the shallow, and then there's also the deep understanding. And what is it that seed that requires deep understanding? And I think that's the nugget coming in as a collaborative nature in my role, is to understand the different parties and the different divisions, what they value, and coming up with that not singularity, but like the quid pro quo. I mean that's a little bit shallow, but where's the commonality that you can have an exchange, that you can have an ongoing engagement to bring something, a product or a service at scale.
Right, and so I like to call it you're working the white spaces and you're having fierce conversations. So any questions at this point? We'd like to be interactive. Anybody with a burning question, come up to the mic and fire away. Don't be shy. No? Okay, so we'll push on. So I'm going to kind of change, because I do, a lot of advising. By the way, in my car that I left on the seats for people I haven't met yet. So I have a website that, breaks down what I do. But I talk a lot about, in the AI age, of being smart will be something completely different. And I don't know, the realization is, I think it's starting to percolate up. But basically, as machine intelligence improves the value of human prediction skills. I hate to hear, it was my gut feel. Well, did you check your gut feel with, some machine intelligence prediction to be able to validate that? So you're seeing going forward in all endeavors is a greater emphasis on things like soft skills, empathy, intuition, cognitive flexibility. And I'd like to ask the panelists how, they're wrapping, in their software products or in consulting services, elements of this in their business practices.
So in our world, the human component is quite important, actually. And so when we're training a virtual assistant on how to answer questions correctly, we look at two things. Obviously, accuracy. We want to make sure it gives the right answer within the right context. And that can be a very technical exercise. But then we also want, as any human conversation, for it to go well, it has to have that warmth and that sense of connection, right? And so that's where the human element really becomes important. And so we end up having teams that are highly creative and highly technical working together. So people that might have a background in creative writing, in script writing for film, right, that really understand the human condition and are great at interpreting feelings and expressing those in a really compelling fashion, tend to be very helpful on our teams because they can take that hardened, accurate response and soften the edges so that it's received in a way that is compelling and encourages the conversation to continue toward a particular objective, right? So that's the marriage of the two, human and technical sides.
Right, and as a corollary to that, I advise emotion AI startups. I'm a big fan because people don't change behavior on information; they change it on emotion, just like we see in mass media. So that's a nice corollary to that. Other insights, please.
Yeah, so I would say that I operate in the space around humanizing technology. So much like my expertise and background is in human-centered communication design and design strategy. And so it's really putting humans at the center of your development and building your technology, your processes, your systems around the needs, both spoken and unspoken, of the people that you're serving. And so what this means is that, when in terms of working with people who have much deeper expertise in technology than myself, is helping them to find that softer side. So much like what Rebecca was just saying. So I'll tell an example. I was recently working with a city, the city of Coral Gables. They were developing a smart microgrid system to power their public safety building for the city, and they had a partnership with a university and this woman who had deep expertise essentially in developing smart microgrid systems powered by solar in this case. And so as we were working together, I was part of the Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge. So the city was starting, they were competing to win up to $1 million actually to fund the development of this. And when I first began working with them, I came in the room and it was supposed to be like a 2-day workshop. And they're like, we already know what we're building. We've even put the footprint for it up on the roof, so we can just show you, and then we can show you the schematics, and so we don't really need your help. But then as we started working together, like within that first 2-day session, they're like, oh my goodness, like we never even thought about these things. Like they never thought about the fact that they're going to be powering the public safety building. But somebody like the police, the chief of police who's there, if the power goes out in the public safety building, immediately the cells in the basement open up and all the prisoners are out. So therefore, there needs to be a lead time. And so it was like, well, what is the lead time that he needs to get, the prisoners elsewhere? Turns out it's 4 hours, whereas somebody else needs 2 hours of lead time. Somebody else only needs power, 20 minutes every 5 days or 5 hours rather, versus, continuous power all the time. And so we needed to develop the rules around the dynamic processing that was happening in this microsystem And then because of that, we also learned that we had to create a standard operating protocol that was visible to everybody else who would be managing a power crisis from a mission control perspective. And so we literally developed that interface between human and technology so that it could coexist and it could really bring the efficiency that they were looking towards, and the increased resilience that they were looking towards of the technology that was going to be put into the public safety building.
I love that. I like to use a quote credited to Peter Drucker: "Efficiency should be delegated to machines, while effectiveness should be human pursuit." So, with that said, I want to bring up a special guest, ZataData, for the fourth chair up here, and I'd like to have Na kick off this slide on Ngaki, which she'll tell you about. I'm passionate about it, and then we want to work in our close how each person and panelist are achieving, their reason for being in their endeavors. So Zeta, come on up, and Na, why don't we kick off your comments on your favorite topic?
So I just want to get a feel from the audience. Is anybody familiar with the term Ikigai? Raise your hand. Wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful. So for those who don't know, Ikigai is direct best translation. It's a Japanese term, the reason for being. And this resonates actually both with Steve and I, and we didn't even know that till recently, that, looking at where we are in terms from the macro level and how we are currently working, what motivates us to work, and how are we working today, and how is the future of work is shaping tomorrow? Considering people have, their lives are much more complex. Women are now in the workforce. The gender differences are growing. People are living in multiple cities, more nomadic life. It's really, really changing in the way that we work and the way that we live. And now what sort of models are we working and looking for? So Ikigai is a terminology that I feel is something that is to be thought of as a way to harness human values, human intrinsic values, in terms of what are they motivated inside, that they're working beyond money, beyond the carrot and the stick. How many people in here know of someone who is so driven by their passion that they're willing to take risks? They're willing to go out and beyond to launch something. And I feel that's very a big key thing towards innovation, is being able to take that risk and being able to know what it takes. I don't know if that's a good
No,
start.
that's perfect, which is a perfect segue to ZataData, because she's zeroing in on her own version of Ikigai. Zata, please.
Yeah, so thank you so much, panel, for having me. I'm so excited and grateful to be here. I am one of those kind of people who I follow my intuition and I back it up with designing technologies for the last 22 years that are operational, that are still working, that are interfacing with human beings, that have changed the world, the way we do business. And one of those things includes a heads-up display for the A-10, for example, 3 satellites and NASA, satellite cameras. We got robotics, communication devices for the intelligence community. And my latest project is something that I was inspired by watching
The Jetsons.
The Jetsons. Thank you so much. I was inspired growing up watching The Jetsons and Wonder Woman. And I realized that the lifestyle of The Jetsons really was a very connected one with machines. And so 3 years ago, I wrote some code for a flying taxi in the AWS cloud, and that's one of my alliance partners. And I was so inspired by creating this, if you will, technology that would allow us to fly, if you will, taxis. That technology is being tested right now by both Uber and Lyft to create what we now know as autonomous vehicles that I immediately spin into, the actual connection that we will have with machines as they're driving us around. And one of the biggest issues that I noticed right away in a world today where we're talking about the future of work, and yet there is a little bit of an issue and concern with harshness in the world, is developing machines that have compassion and empathy built in. And my focus for this very first launch will be the autonomous vehicles.
Tremendous. I think that's really, really tremendous. So we want to open up. We have about 7 minutes or 8 minutes for questions. Come up to the mic, right in the middle. Molly? Yes, thank you. And Molly's doing a Facebook live stream, so we have all the video covered here, recording and everything.
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you. What a fascinating panel. I have two questions. One, to say that I want to know what inspired you to develop the technology. And then, same question, but broader about your panel. Like, how did you get into this very idea?
Great questions. Let's just go right down the line with quick answers, starting with you, Rebecca.
So it has been my career's work really to help businesses engage with customers in a more connected and authentic way. That's been what I've done for 20 years now. And the opportunity with the advancement of AI came about in really being able to bring conversation back into business. If you think about before apps, before websites, business was always conversational. It was about two people coming together, making a connection, agreeing to a mutually beneficial exchange, and making that exchange. And somehow we lost our way a little bit with technology where we anonymized that experience and we disconnected from each other. And I really see my work now as bringing that connection back into place where conversations are taking place that can be real, that can be authentic, and that can truly allow customers to express what they need and get that in a way that is more human-like, which is what we always did to begin with. It's how we are wired. So that's really been the goal and how I started this endeavor.
Beautiful. Human-like is good, no?
My inspiration actually for where I am today is actually through spirituality. I do feel that sometimes we're very disconnected, and I find myself being very connected with Mother Earth, very connected to a higher form, which I don't know, but I'm driven. Like I have an affinity to move towards doing something. I know that there are other people are looking for the same, and I want to help and I want to empower and unlock that in different capacity. And so I have been on a journey, and I have been translating this journey into a business form, into a design form. And I'm shy, and sometimes I don't like talking about it because it sounds like it's out there. But this is just me being very honest, how I am leading my own consulting firm in integrating this higher form of transcendental in a way that we design and we do business. And I find that it's necessary.
Wonderful. Rihanna.
Yeah, so actually a lot of synergies with Nader. But you know, I've had my company for 17 years now, and you know, I would call myself an accidental entrepreneur as far as how it came to be. But in reflective nature, I think that there's a couple core things that just define me as a person that make this the perfect fit for me. So, you know, in terms of the spiritual journey, really looking at like, why am I here? Like, why am I on this earth right now? And I'm very confident that I am here because I am meant to support others to rise to the best version of themselves. And so when you think about and see all the things that I do in my life, whether I'm raising somebody up as an individual, raising them up as a company, as an organization, or now because of a lot of the civic innovation work that I'm doing, you know, raising up the whole world community on specific topics. And then I think the superpower, so another core belief of mine is that every one of us has a superpower that makes us uniquely us. And mine is clarity. And so when it comes to that vision of really raising up and supporting the transformative change that really allows people to take risks, it's using that superpower of clarity to cut out the noise and make the path incredibly clear so that they have conviction, confidence, and strength to really just move through that path with as much ease as possible.
That's great. And I do a lot of work, you know, on kind of a neuroscience aficionado. The brain is really a spotlight, and it, you know, it filters on its own accord what is relevant and and does the in-betweening from there. Zada, you get the last word.
Oh, I'm so excited to be again with this panel. There's so much synergy. I kind of, wanted to bring out what inspires me as well as many of my panelists have said, there is a calling here. We are very gifted at what we do, and we, again, being in a space where I've had to overcome quite a bit of challenges just to, launch and deliver some of these technologies. I've started this ZataData technologies in a time when no one believed that what I was talking about was possible, and I kept telling them, one day you're going to have a ZataData. And we're here. And as a visionary, you have to hold on to the vision, the original vision of your why it showed up to you in the first place, and allow the how to come. And that's where the spirituality comes in. That's where you allow, the process to unfold, and you're flexible and bendable and adaptable. And I have partnered with other firms. I have, worked with other startups, and I've helped them grow. And I realized that this is a very cutthroat market, and that is not really who I am, right? And so part of what drives me is to create a user experience that's different than what you're used to seeing, what you're used to experiencing. We have so much technology, and yet we're so disconnected. There are so many people who don't feel loved, don't feel honored, don't feel respected. And there's high suicide rates. There are folks who don't feel like they are enough, and yet you can change that by giving them your smile, by changing their experience as they're on the way to a meeting in an autonomous vehicle. And that, again, having that vision and being able to, even as I'm getting chills right now, feel what is actually happening with that exchange, that's what gets me up in the morning and gets me going.
I love that close, and it's back to being human. That's what common thing there. So on that note, I really want to give a terrific shout out to the wonderful panel. And thank you very much for attending. And like I said, Contact Innovation is here. We just have a 5-minute handoff, and I want to be, kind to the next presenter. So thanks again.